I think as a starting point, unlike the Hamas attack, which caught Israel by surprise a year ago, the Israeli security establishment has been well aware for a decade and a half of the threat of Hezbollah. And I think what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks has been quite an orderly, well executed deliverance of an organized battle plan, which involved first of all targeting the military leadership, including the head of the snake, so to speak, Hassan Nasrallah, and at least 20 other senior commanders. And now, as we were anticipated, also in parallel with the quite concerted effort from the air, targeting both those commanders, but also the military infrastructure and their capacity to launch short, medium, and long-term rockets. But I think that the next stage, which we saw start last night, was the ground incursion, because there are some things that just can't be done from the air, and primarily the underground infrastructure that Hezbollah have built adjacent to the blue line to the Israeli internationally recognized border that Israel has now announced this morning. 20 villages are now the focus of that operation, and that's really where we are. As you noted, in parallel to all this, and for the last 11 months, the north of Israel has come under incredible barrage of rockets by Hezbollah, around 9,000 in total, which has increased incrementally over the last month or two. Certainly over September has been the largest amount of fire, and they've also expanded the range of that fire towards central Israel as well, including Tel Aviv. So that's kind of where we stand at the moment.
And today we understand that there were alerts across Israel, including Tel Aviv, and some rockets may have got through, or at least the debris may have got through, and people were forced into shelters today.
Yeah, I mean, this is also a pattern that's been happening already for some weeks and months, and it's the example of the Iranian Ring of Fire. This was the doctrine set out by the late IRGC commander Soleimani to surround Israel with a belt of fire. And we've seen that not only that Iran themselves haven't yet involved themselves directly in recent months, not since April we had that night of attacks, but what we've seen are attacks not only from Hezbollah in Lebanon, but the proxies in Syria, in Iraq, as far away as the Houthis in Yemen. And it's actually the Houthis in Yemen that have been firing these very sophisticated rockets. A country, such a poor country that until recently was kind of at the bottom of the world scale in terms of looking after their own citizens. Yet, thanks to Iranian help, they have the most sophisticated ballistic missiles that they're able to fire 1,800 kilometers to Israel. And so I think, though, the warnings and the shrapnel you're referring to may have come from other areas, not necessarily from Lebanon.
And so let's talk more about what you mentioned in terms of these limited pinpoint ground operations that have begun. You mentioned 20 villages. What kind of fighting can we expect in the short term there? Is this close up, or is this still tanks and those kind of maneuvers?
So I'll be cautious because we don't. I mean, first of all, it's under military censorship exactly what the operation looks like. So we should be cautious, and we also don't know how much of the air campaign targeting that infrastructure has really made substantial inroads, and how much kind of after the commanders have been killed, what the morale is like of the fighters that remain. But I would speculate that it will be a combination. That some of it will be standoff. That the Hezbollah will be prepared. They'll be laying IEDs. They'll be laying explosive traps. They'll be firing. What they've got is quite sophisticated anti-tank and anti-personnel missiles. So I think that will be at an instant. And as they get, and again, based on the IDF's extensive experience now fighting Hamas panels underground, so that will also lead to elite commando units having to go underground, that could then lead to actually close face-to-face combat as well. But we don't yet have indications of that.
And of course, part of the plan of the IDF will be to try and get a hold of the stockpiles of Hezbollah weapons that are superior to that which they faced from Hamas, or at least take them out of commission if they can't do it by the air.
Definitely. I mean, the Israeli media has been has carried quotes by unnamed Israeli officials, so we should be cautious, that talk about up to 50% of their rocket capacity having already been destroyed. If we thought the estimates that a year ago, the estimates of the rocket capacity were something like 150,000 rockets, so 50% still leaves quite a substantial amount. And you're right, I think a combination of having to go in and find those rockets that are embedded underground within those villages in the close proximity, as well as the continued air campaign across other areas of Lebanon. I'll draw your attention to the Bekaa Valley, which runs the border on the eastern border between Lebanon and Syria. That's also been a focus of Israeli airstrikes in the recent days and weeks, and that's specifically because Hezbollah, because they have medium and long-term rockets, they don't all need to be based down south. So that was considered some of both the storage sites and the smuggling routes that Iran and Hezbollah use to bring in some of these sophisticated longer range missiles.
And whilst the danger is there for civilians in the north of Israel and, of course, in southern Lebanon as well, there's also a lot of talk about foreign nationals. What do you know about what's happening from a British perspective in terms of people leaving the region or looking to leave the region?
So I think, listen, the British government has already said for several months, called on dual nationals in Lebanon to get out of the way and to if they can leave the country, or at least certainly leave the south. I think it should be quite clear that Israel's military campaign is focused solely and exclusively on the Hezbollah operatives, fighters, terrorists, and makes a clear distinction between not targeting Lebanese civilian of whatever nationality they be. And I'll remind you again that in a post-Nasrallah world, the real hope is that this vice-like grip that Hezbollah has kept their country kind of in this radical state, hopefully that the Lebanese people themselves can, after this operation, can rise up and rid themselves of the scourge of Hezbollah, for all Lebanese, Christians and Muslims and Druze, everyone that can kind of find better governance and a better future. And again, if we end on a positive note, then the chance of a future peace agreement in that Lebanon and Israel, there are no border disputes. Kind of Israel withdrew since the year 2000 to the recognized UN blue line in the north. They have no territorial issues with the people of Lebanon, and there can be hope that a new Lebanese government could bring through and kind of develop mutually advantaged ties and relations with the state of Israel.